All right, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. My name's André Clarke. I'm the Director of Charity Development and Funding for the Lloyds Bank Foundation. I'm also joined by my colleagues, Naomi Sampson, who is a Grants Officer, Francis Warwick, Regional Manager for the East of England and London, and Rachel Marshall, our Regional Manager for Wales. Today, we're going to be sharing with you some background information on the specialist program, which is currently open for applications, the eligibility guidelines, and giving you the opportunity to ask questions about it. At the end of this webinar, you should have a clear idea of whether this program aligns with your organization's mission and strategic focus, and whether your charity meets the eligibility criteria. So before we get into the detail, joining us today are Carleen and John, our British Sign Language interpreters, and Ewan and Joe, our speech captionists. To increase the image of the speakers and interpreters, hover in the middle of the screen between the presentation and speakers, and the bar will appear. You can then click and drag the bar to the left to increase the speakers and interpreters, or drag to the right to increase the presentation. So that we can make this as easy as possible for them, we'll be sticking to a script for the first half of this session. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube platform afterwards, so that anyone that couldn't join today can watch it back later. We're looking forward to hearing from you, and we're committed to providing a safe environment for everyone attending. So in terms of ground rules, I want to be really clear that we will not tolerate discrimination or harassment in any form, and anyone who does engage in such behaviors will be removed from the session. I'm going to explain to you how to use the technical features on the webinar. So if you want to ask a question, use the Q&A function found on the lower right-hand side of your screen. And if you want to, there is a button you can use which will anonymize your question. You can submit a question at any time, and our aim is to answer all questions during the webinar, either during the panel discussion or written in the Q&A function. And any that we don't get to will be followed up after the session. So to make sure this session is useful for the most people, we won't be answering any questions that are specific to a single organization. If after hearing the contents of this webinar and reading the guidelines and criteria, you think you meet them, would be eligible, and are considering applying but have a specific question relating to your ideas or circumstances, then please feel free to get in touch with us directly for a chat. We'll provide contact information on the slide at the end, and we will reshare these slides with everyone after the event. Once you've got enough information to decide whether or not to apply, feel free to drop off the call. And if you're struggling with the tech, we have 5 people behind the scenes answering questions, and they will be able to help. So that's taking care of the technical side of things. I'm going to give you a quick run through of the agenda. Naomi, Rachel, Francis, and I will share information with you for around 40 minutes, followed by a 10-minute break, and then we'll have plenty of time after that for your questions. I'll start by giving a brief overview of the program. Naomi will then talk through our eligibility criteria, and Rachel and Francis will discuss the themes and the program criteria you need to demonstrate as an organization. So a bit about the program. The specialist program is all about supporting charities that work closely with people to overcome complex issues that don't have simple solutions. We know that many charities address a broad range of complex issues within a local community. However, under this program, we want to support charities whose focus and the majority of their work is on one of these 8 issues or themes: addiction, asylum seekers and refugees, care leavers, domestic abuse, homelessness, offending, sexual abuse and exploitation, and trafficking and modern slavery. We know that these issues make life much harder for people, deepening trauma and impacting health and well-being, leading to and often causing poverty and destitution and preventing people from being able to lead fulfilling lives. Small, local, and specialist charities play a unique role in helping people rebuild their lives. We believe that their size, connection to their communities, and deep understanding of the issues that people face make small charities best placed to reach, engage, and support people. And that's why we support small charities with an annual income of between £25,000 to £500,000, where the main focus of your charity is to provide support for one of the 8 themes which Rachel will outline. Under this program, we will support charities to strengthen their organization and to become more resilient through a breadth of tailored support, building on the existing knowledge, skills, and capabilities of staff and trustees. This is combined with an unrestricted grant of £75,000 spread equally over 3 years. We know the value of unrestricted funding to charities. So when we say an unrestricted grant, we mean that you can use the funding however you see fit, including to cover salaries, rent, and utilities, or to supplement your reserves. And this year, we're looking to fund 83 charities with closing at 5 p.m. on the 23rd of January, 2025. You will find out the final decision on the 23rd of May, 2025. So this is a whistle-stop tour of the funding program. I'll now ask Naomi to take us through the eligibility criteria in more detail. Over to you, Naomi.
Thank you, André. So hello, everyone. I'm Naomi. I'm one of the grants officers at the Foundation, and we carry out the initial assessment of your application and then contact you after checking that your organisation meets the eligibility and programme criteria. Last year, we received a total of 321 applications, and we funded 90 of them. I would like to highlight from the previous round that many organisations took the time to apply, even though they weren't actually eligible. 46% of all declined applications were rejected at the initial eligibility stage, and a decline application, one of those examples could be that they didn't have at least 3 unrelated trustees. Following on from this, 28% of all declined applications were declined at our programme fit stage, and this is where we check whether your primary main work as a charity fits with our programme. Overall, the top 3 reasons specialist programme applications were declined last year were because the primary work of the charity did not meet the theme that the charity applied under. The charity were a poor programme fit due to not addressing all of an individual's needs directly or indirectly through trusted and established partnerships or relationships with other organisations. And lastly, the annual income of the charity was outside of our threshold, which is from £25,000 to £500,000. So we want to make the application process as accessible as possible, whilst also saving you time from applying if your charity does not currently meet our criteria. So here are some tips on how to ensure you are eligible to apply before you start your application. So please go to the funding page on our website, click on the specialist programme and scroll down the page. You will find the link to our eligibility quiz. So please take the quiz. It's only 2 minutes and it's an easy and quick way to check your eligibility before you go through the whole application process. If the quiz's outcome shows that you are eligible, you can scroll further down and you'll find a few drop-down tabs where you can read our general criteria and find our FAQs. Then from here, please look at how your charity fits with the programme aims by reading our thematic guidance. The guidance can be found by clicking on Read More on the theme you are applying under. Once you've done our quiz and read through the theme guidance, you can click Apply on the theme you are applying under. So if you need to talk to someone before you submit your application, you can also book a Teams call with one of our grants officers. We are more than happy to help you assess your eligibility and answer any other questions that you might have. So following your submission through the portal, grants officers will complete your application's initial assessment. If your charity appears to be a good programme fit, we'll then arrange a call to discuss the work you do in more detail, as well as information about how your organisation is run and to understand more about your charity's strengths and development priorities. Before I share more details about the eligibility criteria, I just want to flag the use of artificial intelligence, also known as AI. So we've seen a huge increase in the number of charities using AI to help write their grant applications. We understand the cost and time pressures that charities are under and the use of AI in easing this. However, we are seeing an over-reliance on AI for grant applications, and in many cases, this is not actually to the charity's advantage in terms of success. We read every single application, gladly, may I say, that we receive, and we do not use AI in any part of our decision-making. It's often obvious when AI has been over-relied on, as the applications are generic, they don't give a clear voice of the charity, and they don't showcase the charity's unique strengths and voice. Therefore, if you are intending to use AI to help write your application, please do look at our website. It provides more guidance on this. Okay, now let's talk eligibility criteria. So you must be registered as a charity or charitable incorporated organisation with the Charity Commission or the Index for Charities if you're registered in the Isle of Man. We will ask for your charity registration number at the start of your application. We will look for several things in your Charity Commission record. So we'll check to see that you have at least one set of annual accounts showing as received on the Charity Commission record. They should cover the last 12 months of operating period from when you submit your application. In these published accounts, we must be able to see that your total annual income is between $25,000 and $500,000. We use the accounts on the Charity Commission website based on the time you submit your application to us. We also want to see that you have a board of trustees, at least three unrelated trustees in place, with their names appearing on your Charity Commission record. Your organisation must be based and working in England and Wales and have at least a 12-month track record of supporting adults over the age of 18. The only exception is charities applying under our care leavers scheme. They must have a track record of supporting people aged 16 to 25 years old. You will also need to have a bank account in the name of your organisation with unrelated signatories. If your application is successful, the grant will be paid into this account and we'll ask for these details at a later stage. The majority of people in positions of power, including trustees, the CEO and senior managers, must not be related or live at the same address. And additionally, we will check to see if you are an independent organisation. So this will involve looking at any formal associations that you have with other organisations, parent bodies or group structures. And we'll check that your trustees have full control over your organisation's work and any conflicts of interest or loyalties. We would want to see a policy in place that reflects and addresses this. Your organisation must have an up-to-date safeguarding policy, which is embedded and understood across your organisation. You must also have a designated safeguarding lead or officer. The person will be trained to level 3 or equivalent and is accountable for your safeguarding practice. When you speak to one of our grants officers, we'll ask you about your safeguarding policy and practice, and we'll also require you to hold public liability insurance. Religious activity should not be part of the services delivered unless a charity has been established to support people specifically of that faith. If you provide counselling as part of your services, you must hold registration with one of the professional standards authorities, accredited registers for counselling and psychotherapy. If you provide immigration advice as part of your services, your organisation must hold registration with the Office of Immigration Services Commissioner, also known as OISC. And finally, if you currently hold a grant from us, the end date of your grant must be before the 23rd of January 2026. If you believe you do meet our eligibility and programme fit criteria, we're looking forward to getting to know more about your charity and supporting you the best way we can. Hopefully this has all made sense, but if you have any further questions, please use the Q&A button. Now, Rachel, one of our regional managers, will go into what we mean when we talk about programme fit criteria.
Thank you, Naomi. Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel. As Naomi mentioned, I'm one of the Foundation's regional managers. If your application is successful, I or one of my colleagues will work with you for the duration of your grant to help you identify your most pressing development needs and to access a range of support to help your organisation strengthen by building skills, capabilities, and to access great resources. Today, I'm going to talk you through the 8 themes we are looking to fund under the Specialist Programme and highlight some of the programme criteria so you understand what type of support we are looking to fund. Through this programme, we are looking to fund small and specialist charities whose main focus is on one of 8 themes. So what do we mean by specialist? We mean the main purpose of your charity must be to support adults whose everyday lives are significantly affected by the particular theme you are applying under. To understand your purpose, as well as your application form, we'll look at your stated objectives within your governing document on the Charity Commission website or Index of Charities. We look at your annual report, your website, and your social media channels. We won't fund organisations where that theme is only one of several projects. We won't fund charities who only work with children or where services for children are the main focus of your work, unless you support care leavers. So the 8 themes are addiction. This includes all forms of addiction. This may also include working with families, but we don't fund charities where the main focus is predominantly on families. Care leavers. This is for support for people aged 16 to 25 who are planning to leave care or who have left care and have support needs. This can include charities who have been set up to support unaccompanied minors who have come to the UK as asylum seekers. Domestic abuse. Providing support for people who have experienced an incident or pattern of controlling, coercive, threatening, degrading, and/or violent behaviour. This includes psychological, physical, sexual, emotional, or economic abuse. The main focus of your charity can also be working with perpetrators. This might be a partner, family member, or friend. We will also partner with charities working with people who've experienced so-called honour-based violence or harmful practices. Homelessness. Supporting people who do not have a permanent home. This could be street homelessness, sofa surfing, staying in a hostel, night shelter, or bed and breakfast accommodation. Additionally, your charity may provide some prevention support for those who are vulnerably housed, where homelessness is threatened, but this should not be the only focus of your work. Offending. Supporting people with a history of offending, which significantly impacts on everyday life, including rehabilitation of and prevention of reoffending for people with a custodial or community sentence. Asylum seekers and refugees. Supporting those who have arrived in the UK and have applied for asylum or have received refugee status in the last 2 years, and/or people with no recourse to public funds. If you provide immigration advice as part of your services, as Naomi said, you must be registered with the Office of Immigration Services Commissioner, or OISC, to provide advice services, and you must be doing so free of charge. Sexual abuse and exploitation. This will include charities that work with those that are survivors of exploitation, pornography, abuse of power, or assault. It includes survivors of so-called honour-based violence and female genital mutilation or circumcision. Work with victims who are also perpetrators and support for perpetrators to safely reintegrate into society after a custodial sentence. Trafficking and modern slavery. Supporting those who have been trafficked or are survivors of modern slavery. We will consider how your work fits with the national referral mechanism. So let's look more at your work now. As well as telling us what you do and who you work with, it's also really important to describe in detail how you deliver your support and services. It's important that your support is in-depth, holistic in that you address all of an individual's needs, either directly or indirectly through trusted relationships or partnerships, and is person-centered, i.e. you are working towards personal plans. So what do we mean by all of this? In-depth services. We will not fund one-off support where there is no long-term relationship. For example, a helpline or a drop-in only service, or just signposting to other services. We will consider applications where short-term support leads to continued engagement. For example, you might be a homeless charity with a drop-in, which provides hot food, showers, clothing, etc., and which helps to build trust with the people accessing your services. In building that trust, you must also provide the longer-term, in-depth support, such as a key worker, who would work with a person to address interlinked challenges, such as access to benefits, mental health, immigration, housing, etc. So tell us, for your particular specialist area, how your services are in depth, and build to create a pathway of support for people, rather than just giving us a list of services. Trusted relationships or partnerships. We know that as a single charity or service, you can't be expected to meet all the needs of all the people you support. However, you should have trusted relationships with providers or agencies which can help people to overcome the additional challenges they face. This could include benefits, housing, mental health support, addiction support, domestic abuse services, etc. We would like to see that when you refer someone for support, keep in touch with the partner agency to ensure the individual's needs are being addressed and that they are progressing on their pathway. In your application, you should tell us who your partners are and why they are important to how you deliver services to your clients or beneficiaries. Here's a tip. It's not enough just to state you have partnerships. We'll be looking for the detail about what they entail and how you know clients' needs are being met when you refer them on. Person-centered services and personal plans. We will support charities that structure their support around each individual. By this, we mean focusing on a person's strengths while meeting their needs and helping them overcome barriers. You will work together with an individual to understand the challenges they're experiencing and agree on how you will help them to find a way to overcome them. You will keep written or electronic records or case files for each person you are supporting and keep track of progress. For example, you might use the Outcome STAR framework or something similar. Your charities should be able to demonstrate the difference you are making through these records. Here's a tip. To demonstrate your work in a person-centered way, you need to tell us how you work as an organisation in your application form, as well as telling us what you do. We'd like to hear about the systems you use to capture data and how you are undertaking personal planning. An example of a charity delivering this type of support is a small charity we funded last year, which has built up a truly responsive service to the needs of care leavers in its area, working with around 250 people a year. It works with care experienced young people aged 4 to 25, with the majority aged 16 to 25. They provide intensive support, mentoring, and learning and development opportunities, which the young people themselves have co-designed. It delivers services from a purpose-built centre with small accommodation units for developing semi-independent living skills on site. It runs a range of one-to-one and group programmes and forums to help develop living skills like finance, budgeting, dealing with debt, cooking, and well-being skills, including food and nutrition, health and hygiene, relationships, personal development, which helps build confidence and self-esteem, and employment and education. It also provides intensive support to young people that have been exploited or are at risk of being exploited, including trafficking of young people, e-safety, and privacy and safety online. They receive referrals through schools, social workers, carers, support workers, and often young people themselves. And they work in partnership with their referral bodies, plus the local college and university, and a range of third-party sector partners. Each person supported has their unique needs and past experiences. There's no set programme of support that is provided. Staff are guided by the needs and ambitions of each young person to help them identify goals and reach their potential. With each young person, they co-design a work plan to identify short and long-term goals and provide a point of reference to measure how far they have progressed in the following months and years. Typically, they work with young people for several years, the average time being 2 years plus. During this time, they contact them at least once a week through one-to-one support, group training, and informal contact. During this time, they build up a solid understanding of their needs, adverse childhood experiences, and traumas, and importantly, get to build their trust. Next, I will hand you over to my colleague Frances, who will go through the remaining programme criteria with you all.
Hello everyone, I'm Frances, and like Rachel, I support organisations to identify, prioritise and access organisational development support to move them closer to their development goals. I support organisations across the east of England and parts of London. I'm going to talk you through the rest of the programme criteria, including your approach to equity, diversity and inclusion, how you involve people with lived experience, your understanding of trauma and strength-based approaches, and your commitment to the development of your organisation. I'm also going to give you some tips along the way to help strengthen your application. Before I launch into the criteria, I just want to give you my first tip. Many applications in the last round relied heavily on AI to answer some of the questions. And as we've said, we truly recognise the value of AI and how this can help organisations overcome barriers. We encourage applicants to use AI where it can help you access our process. However, if you are using AI, please do read through the text afterwards and make sure your application hasn't lost your voice. As Naomi said, we do read every application and we hear your passion and authenticity through your words. We don't mind if your grammar or spelling isn't accurate, but we want to know that you're passionate about what your charity does and how it makes a difference to the people you support. Okay, so back to the programme criteria. Your approach to EDI. So your organisation will recognise the importance of equity, diversity and inclusion and take action to address inequities. We know that some people face discrimination because of how other people respond to who they are. This might be in relation to their age, disability, gender reassignment, race, religion or belief, sex, sexual orientation, poverty, social class, or being rurally isolated. We also know that we don't have all the same opportunities, and therefore we want to partner with charities that acknowledge this and adjust their support and access to services accordingly. In your application, we want to hear that you understand the makeup of your community and the additional barriers that some people that you're working with face. We want you to show us how you proactively engage with the people you support to address the barriers they experience so that they can access your services. So my next tip. This was one of the questions on the form last year where AI was used a lot and where its use really did let the application down. Many applications were declined because they hadn't answered the question properly. Many people wrote a values statement, but we're interested to hear what your organisation is actually doing to address equity, diversity and inclusion. We want to know how you make people feel welcome and valued. How do you adjust your support and access for people who face barriers? Give us examples of the things that you've put in place or changes that you've made to reach out to people and support them access your services. An example from last year is that we received an application from an addiction charity that recognises that women with addiction are underserved in its local area. The charity set up referral pathways to women's organisations in the area. They've got images on their website and publicity material of women using the services. And they encourage women who use its services to talk to other women who could benefit from their support. They've tailored their services for women by having women-only opening times, which provides a safe space, a women's support worker who provides bespoke support, and they lead women-only drop-in groups. And they provide access to specialist targeted support to meet the needs of individual women. They recognise that women are a diverse group and that there are groups of women who face additional barriers to accessing its support, including disabled women experiencing addiction and women from the Muslim community experiencing addiction. The charity recognises that some of the needs of these two groups of women will be different, and they tailor their support for each group. The next criteria is about how you involve people with lived experience of the issues you support throughout your organisation. We believe that charities that involve the people who use their services at all stages of decision making, including the planning and delivery of services, have a deeper insight into their challenges and opportunities. These charities can better engage with and meet the needs of the people they support, and they deliver greater impact. In addition, staff and volunteers who have lived experience of the challenges the charity is tackling often report more confidence and a greater sense of belonging. So we're looking for charities to demonstrate a strategic approach to involving people who use or who have used their services in decision making and in the design and delivery of their services. By lived experience, we mean people who are directly affected by the issues your organisation is trying to tackle. A good example from last year's applications is a charity who supports offenders and has really embedded lived experience through its organisation. 40% of its staff, trustees and volunteers have direct experience of the criminal justice system and have previously been supported by the charity. The charity recognises the value that individuals with lived experience can bring to the services, giving them an insight into what needs to change or how it has or hasn't worked for them. People with lived experience act as ambassadors for the charity, attending events and presentations to speak about their experiences of the criminal justice system. The charity has a forum where people using the services discuss and raise any issues around support, what's missing, what's been valuable, and anything that needs to be improved on. These consultations are run every 2 months in person and inform the design and delivery of all services. We know that involving people with lived experience in your charity is a journey, and we're not expecting that this is something that you'll have completely sorted. What we're interested in finding out about is your commitment to this, the progress that you've made so far, and plans to develop this in this area. We'll support organisations that strongly aspire to develop their practice in this area. The next criteria is about your understanding of trauma and strengths-based approaches. Trauma-informed care is an approach adopted by an organisation to improve awareness of trauma and its impact on an individual's neurological, biological, psychological and social development. We recognise that many of the people you work with will have experienced and may still be experiencing trauma. That trauma may have happened in their past, such as adverse childhood experiences, including experience of the care system or the impact of sustained mental ill health. And they may be experiencing that trauma currently due to the issues they're facing, such as domestic abuse or seeking sanctuary in this country because they've been persecuted in their home country. We'll partner with charities that understand the widespread impact of trauma, triggers and symptoms of trauma in the people they support. We want to hear how you work with individuals to find potential pathways for recovery. We want to see that the services you provide offer effective support and above all, do not re-traumatise people accessing or working in your services. So here's a tip. Use your application to show us how you build positive relationships with the people you support, how you place individual needs at the heart of any support, and how you work with the people you support to identify their strengths and goals. By giving them choice and control and helping them build support networks outside of your charity, you're helping people to take responsibility for their journey of recovery. So tell us about what you do. Direct and indirect trauma can also impact on staff and volunteers, so we also want to hear about how you support them. The next criteria is about your commitment to organisational development. So we want to help charities go stronger, become more resilient and thrive beyond their relationship with us, to support them do what they do well, even better. Based on charity feedback and external research, we know that organisational development support, alongside an unrestricted grant, has a greater impact on small charities than funding alone. Our strong development focus makes us unique as a funder. As a result, we focus on charities that can benefit most from our organisational development support, not just the funding alone. So this means that we fund charities that have a good understanding of their own organisational strengths and goals, and have a willingness to invest time and effort in addressing these. So here's the tip. You need to show us that you've thought about your organisational development and that you and the trustees are committed to engaging in support. We build trusted partnerships with funded groups, and if your application is successful, we'll work closely with you and the board. We'll be in regular contact with you and we'll visit your organisation once or twice a year to really get to know you and your charity. Regional managers are skilled at facilitating development conversations, and together we will create an organisational development plan covering the period of the grant that moves you towards your organisational goals. Plans can include anything from governance support, strategic planning, creating a funding plan, or introducing a database. And they can include one-to-one consultancy, as well as opportunities to work with colleagues from Lloyds Banking Group. Finally, we want to make sure our funding reaches all small specialist charities across the whole of England and Wales. In both the 2023 and 2024 programmes, we received significantly more applications from some regions than others or Wales. For this programme, we'll aim to increase our investment in the areas where we have previously funded fewer charities. We've also seen that in the last two funding rounds, around 70% of successful applications have already had a funding relationship with us. We recognise the importance of building strong and long-term relationships, but we don't want to unfairly favour those we know. For this round, where comparable applications meet the programme criteria, we will prioritise charities the Foundation has not previously supported. So, that's everything from me. Now I'll hand you back to André.
Great, thanks for that, Francis, and thanks to the rest of the panel. So there's been lots of information packed in there, and just to recap some key dates. So applications close at 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 23rd of January. Shortlisting and assessments take place between February and April, with decisions made in May 2025. So there are questions coming through in the chat, and while we have a quick look at the questions, we will take a 10-minute break. So feel free to add any questions you have, grab a drink, and see us back here at 11:23. Welcome back, everyone. While we've been on the break, we've seen a fair few questions coming through, and the panel will take turns in responding to them, and by all means sort of building on some of the questions that are coming through. Just as a reminder, the Q&A function is also there, and I can see that questions have been coming through and we've been getting through them. Okay, so I am going to start off with a question that I'm going to put to Francis. So Francis, this question says, we've been told by several other local charities not to waste time applying to the foundation because we only fund one large charity in the region. If you're interested, if you are funding charities in an area, does this mean we have less chance of success?
No, and I feel quite sad about that you've been told not to apply to us. We look at each application to see if they meet the programme criteria. And this doesn't include geography, so all the things that Rachel and I listed. What happens is that if we receive more eligible applications than we can fund under a particular theme, then we'll prioritise areas where we're funding fewer or no charities. I'm afraid we're not really able to be specific about the regions because this kind of follows the review of the portfolio, and it really does depend what applications we receive at the time. So I can't be more specific than that, but as long as you meet the programme criteria and there aren't other organisations being funded in that region, then yeah, you stand a good chance.
Absolutely, and I think that's an important point there, Francis, and sort of going, we look at it once we have a sense of what's come through the door in terms of applications, and then we sort of make a decision on that basis. I don't know, Rachel or Naomi, anything you want to add to that one?
No, completely agree with Francis. It's really sad that people don't think they can apply to us, so we have funds available. Please do apply.
Well, so we've had another question which is about funding community interest companies, KICs, and the person raising the question says that I see that you fund KICs under your racial equity and deaf and disabled people's organizations funding. Do you fund KICs under the specialist funding? And if not, why? And so, I mean, I'll take that one. So we, under this program, we are only funding charities and charitable incorporated organizations registered with the Charity Commission or the Index for Charities if you're registered in the Isle of Man. And I think the context is sort of two things. One, we are making only 83 grants across the themes. And year on year, we see that we receive significantly more applications from specialist charities than we can fund in a given year. So I think that's one, a sort of contextual point. But two, in terms of our inclusion program, so that's our racial equity and our DDPO program, we did some fairly detailed service design work. And one of the areas that came out was that KICs were very much important, active, and relevant in that space. And so we are testing our funding and our delivery of organizational development support to KICs for those programs. And we'll be reviewing the learning from that to think about whether we might extend that to other programs in the future. but for now and for this round of funding that's open, it's solely open to charities or CIOs. Naomi, I'm going to come to you with 2 questions around eligibility. So the first one is, what's meant by the accounts have to cover the last 12 months operating period? So if the charity's year end is, let's say, September 2024, by January, which is the submission deadline, accounts for 23-24 will not be available yet. Is that okay?
Oh, good question. So we would look at your most recent set of accounts published on your Charity Commission record. So at the time of application, so when you submit, so the latest one on there, that's what will go off. It's, you know, no harm to kind of put our kind of reporting period, is this to this, in your application, just so we know as well, if we cross-reference with the Charity Commission, we can see, oh, this is their latest accounts, that's all good. Yeah, no harm in putting that, but also we will just always go off your latest submission.
Right, thanks, Naomi. And the next one that I'm going to put to you is, if you support people from 16 plus rather than 18 plus, are we still eligible to apply?
Okay, yes, so the majority of the people you support must be people aged 18 and over, so that has to be the majority. But if you work with younger people, that's absolutely fine. They just can't be the majority of the people you're working with, if that makes sense.
Right, thanks for that, Naomi. And just sort of a reminder to folks too that you will see that many people are asking questions in the Q&A function, so some of your questions might equally have been answered there, but most certainly have a look there as well. Rachel, coming to you on this question, do get any other questions, by the way, that you have that you want to send through, coming through in the chat. So this is a sort of last call out for any questions. Rachel, so our charity meets 3 of the program's themes. Can I apply for all 3 themes or just choose one?
So as I sort of mentioned earlier, we don't fund general organisations. This is a specialist programme, so you can only apply under one theme. So we'll look at your Charity Commission record, your annual report, any other publicly available information like your website and your social media channels, to really look at and to see where the main focus of your work lies. So it's under that theme, that should be the one that you make your application under. We do appreciate that some of the themes are interlinked and interrelated, as we sort of mentioned at the very beginning. People have complex issues in society, but you do need to choose one to focus on. And when we do our checks, we'll look and see whether that really is the main focus of your work.
All right, anything else you want to add to that, Naomi or Francis? No. Well, I've got another question, and I'm going to put this to you as well, Rachel. You know, the question says, it looks like my charity might be a really good fit. Thanks for the in-depth breakdown of the requirements. I'd like to hear more on the partnership aspect. How do you judge a charity to have strong partnerships? What are some of the key indicators?
Okay, so we'll look at who you're working with in your local community, sort of with that understanding that as a small and local charity, we can't expect you to meet every single need of every single person that walks through your door. Because you're doing that personal planning, people might have aspirations and needs which go beyond the services that you provide. So we'll look at who your referral partners are in terms of who's referring into you for services and who you're referring out to, and look at how strong those partnerships are and how appropriate they are. So really it will depend on which themes that you apply under, but obviously we've supported a number of charities under these themes for a while now, and we have sort of track record really of looking at what types of partnerships we would expect to see. That doesn't mean that you can't have novel or new partnerships, because your situation will be unique. But please tell us about why those partners are important to how you deliver your services when you're describing them in your application to us.
Cheers for that, Rachel. One of the things that I can't remember which one of you said it, but it talked about meeting all of a person's needs, whether directly or indirectly. And I guess that's where this idea of working in partnership comes in. I wonder, Naomi, if you've got any sort of thoughts around that, just from your own assessment process and the conversations that you're having with many of the applicants.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think where kind of applicants would fall down on this one is they're maybe naming other organisations or not naming them, but it's very clear it's a signpost. So they'll name, oh, we have X charity that does debt advice in our area, and we let our, the people we work with know where they are or who they are. And that doesn't, to us, show it's kind of, indirectly or directly kind of doing that holistic support, because we want to see that you're tracking that relationship, that person is getting the most out of that relationship, even if you aren't delivering that directly yourself. It's about investing in the people you work with and making sure kind of in the long term everything is met.
Really helpful. Francis, go for
André,
it.
I was just going to come in and say it's about that. It's about a supported referral. So you're not just letting somebody go off. You're actually you're following them through and hearing back from them, seeing how that support has been helping them. So it's that sort of that tracking sounds awful, but you know what I mean. It's keeping track of what's going on, really.
Yeah.
I think that framing of supported referrals is really helpful, Francis. So just before we wrap up, I just wondered, Rachel, Francis, Naomi, you've given a couple of tips throughout the process, but any sort of final tip, takeaway that you think it would be helpful to share with potential applicants on the call? And just a reminder that if you have any question that, as we said earlier on, and we've said a few times, that you're not quite sure about, that you want to just make sure that you're not wasting your time, because that's the last thing we want, please book a Calendly call in with one of the team. Take the time, ask the questions, explore it, and see whether this is going to be worth your time in applying for. So I'm going to go Rachel, then Naomi, then Francis. Takeaway, final tips or parting words before we wrap up. Rachel.
Okay, for me, the most important thing is telling us how you work as a charity. So not just focusing on what you do and who you do it with and where you're based, but really tell us how you work. We really want to understand how you work as a small and local charity. And so for each of the questions, think about how you deliver against those criteria, and that's really important for us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. Naomi?
Yeah, so I actually have two tips, if that's okay. So
Yeah,
the first one would be a case study, and I know that's kind of a bit of a jargon word, but I think it's really helpful to see, and when you kind of remember someone you've worked with as an organisation and kind of the journey you took them on, being able to kind of relate that in your application is really quite powerful, because you can we can see a picture of the work you really do in practice and in reality, which is always helpful to see. And I'd also say kind of looking at what is unique to your service, because we're looking for specialist services. We're looking for ones that really work in this area, this theme or this complex issue, in a very in-depth way. So what do you do specifically that is a bit different in your area, or is really kind of meeting those in-depth needs of the people you work with?
Brilliant. You got two in there, Naomi. Francis, go for it.
Okay, so mine would be to be confident. So don't underestimate what you're doing. It might seem, it's an example of how you support a specific group of people within your community. Might seem very obvious to you, but actually tell us about it. We want to hear. So so no matter how small it is, put it down.
Brilliant. And mine would be sort of a reminder, as as a foundation, investing in small charities, investing in you where you are on going on that journey is really important. And so to that extent, we're also not looking to fund perfection. We're looking to fund charities that can, relatively speaking, benefit and go the furthest with the combination of unrestricted funding and organizational development support. And so that self-awareness of actually, we're really good, and that confidence, we're really good at this bit, but actually we recognize that we have more work to do in this area over here, is an absolutely legitimate thing, and something that we actually look at quite favorably, because it shows an awareness of what your organization is doing, but not just what, but also how it's working and relating, and importantly, where you want to go. So those would be some helpful tips from us. So just to sum up, and before we go, again, a big reminder, if you have a question that hasn't been answered in the chat or by us on the webinar today, please feel free to email your question or book a call with a member of the team via our website. Massive thanks to Naomi, Rachel, Francis for being today's panelists and for talking through the program and responding to the questions. Big thanks to our team behind the scenes, both fielding and responding to the questions. To our British Sign Language interpreters, John and Carleen, and our speech captionists, Ewan and Joe, thank you. And thanks to everyone who's joined us. Many thanks for listening. And I really hope that you found it helpful. Please get in touch if you'd like to discuss an application. And as you leave the call, you'll see a feedback form open in a browser tab. Every single time we do one of these, we take the feedback from it and we think about how we can improve the way that we have these conversations and how we can be as transparent as possible. So please complete that to let us know your thoughts on today's session, and wishing you a good rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.